Hello. Hello. Can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me okay? Good deal. This is the first time that I've used Zoom with my earbuds in, so I've been using a headset all week. So
we have this nice little mic, so that helps.
Yeah, I had a pair of headphones I'd been using, and I had been on Zoom so much this week that it was starting to make my head hurt, but from wearing the headphones. So I thought I'm going to try the earbuds and see how it works. Do you pronounce your name Calliope?
It's Calliope.
Calliope? Okay, very good. And you're a knitter, it looks like. That's awesome.
I needed something to keep my hands fidgety. So I made this morning.
Wow, that's awesome.
And yeah, it's been very useful on this quarantine stuff.
I actually ran out and got some yarn myself before they kind of shut everything down so I could make a baby blanket. So I'm not a very experienced knitter, but I can knit just enough to do simple things. So
yeah, I started Googling all sorts of stuff. This is the first blanket I've attempted. So we'll see how it goes. But of course, the yarn that I ordered, I didn't order till after everything got crazy. So it'll be here. It'll be a while.
Yeah.
Oh well. Yeah. But I learned to do this while I was studying abroad a couple years ago.
Very good. Where did you study abroad at?
In Finland.
Ah.
Yeah.
A great experience.
It was really cool. I'm very excited about this because of that. I went to a conference while I was there for the SDG4, and they were talking about like that year's benchmark, and
I'm so
all
glad
about
that you're
this
in
sort
this
of
session.
thing.
You'll have a lot to contribute, I think. Then I was hoping that there would be some people in here that had some other experience, some more broad experience too. So
yeah, I don't have a whole lot. I don't have a whole lot of global, like, I'm interested for the technology aspect. I've done a lot of work with like incorporating global like learning and experiences in classrooms and like those sorts of things, but never with technology yet. I have some ideas, not a lot.
That's great. I'm excited to have you be sure and contribute. So that'll be good.
Cool.
I see a couple other people popping in here. We're a small group right now, so if you want to unmute your mic and say hello and tell us what you teach or anything, you're welcome to do that, or maybe pop open the chat and chat in, what grade levels you teach, what school you're at, anything like that. That would be fantastic. one of the skills that I haven't learned how to do yet that I want to learn is how to make my computer play music while I'm waiting for the last few minutes of a Zoom session. I was in a session the other day with somebody and they had the music coming through and I was like, that's a good thing. So you know that your sound is working without having to keep chatting in as the host, but I haven't got that mastered yet. So. Hi, Melissa. I see we've got a Melissa who joined and a Jessica who joined in. And if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat, or we're a pretty small group, so if you just want to unmute and introduce yourself, that's fine too. We'll wait another minute or two here and see if anybody else joins us at 3. Hi, Brittany. We'll wait just a couple more minutes and then we'll get started here. If you want to chat in and tell us maybe where you're from, what your interest is in this session, that would be great. And I'll get started here in a little bit. Hi, Lauren. I can see that you've joined us. Hope you can hear us okay.
Hi, yes, I can hear you.
Very good, very good. You guys have matching shirts on, Lauren and Calliope. Is that how you told me it was pronounced? Calliope? Okay.
Yeah, we didn't do it on purpose, but it kind of works out. We're both ESU students.
Very good.
She invited me to this conference.
That's fantastic. Well, I don't know how many other people in the session are ESU grads, but I am. So I am glad to see some other Hornets in the room. So yay for Hornets.
Fingers up.
Stingers up. You know, I've learned that was not a thing 30 years ago when I was a senior at
Yeah, no, that started with President Sean Rock.
Okay. Yeah, I've stayed on top of things enough to know what it means if somebody does it and I can do it back, but very good, very good. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and get started here in just a minute. This is a pretty small group right now, so if you have any need to unmute and say something or add something to what I'm saying, please feel like you can. Go ahead and chat in if you haven't and introduce yourself so that people can kind of see maybe where you're teaching and what your interest is. I know we have a couple of pre-service teachers with us. That's great. I think that's fantastic. And one of them, I don't know if you see the chat. If the chat happens before you come in the room, I don't know if you get to see that. I think the other day we discovered that maybe you don't see all the chats that happen before you join. So I want to let you know that we have a person in the room who's studied abroad herself in Finland, and so she might have something to add to our talk as this is kind of about global collaboration. So, and I hope that you'll feel like you're comfortable enough that if the session isn't meeting your needs, like in a true EdCamp fashion, feel free to chat in and say, hey, I gotta go and we'll see you later, and that'll be fine. We'll understand. Or if it doesn't seem like it's meeting your needs, then I don't want to take anybody's time. So be sure to get the most out of an EdCamp in the way that benefits you professionally. I've done several EdCamps over the course of my career, and this is, of course, the first one that I've had the opportunity to experience virtually. So we'll see how it goes. I just thought that this would be a good topic. And especially now, I think we're going to have a whole lot of people when we all head back to school that are way more comfortable with the concept of video conferencing than we ever were before. And so the thought of doing a classroom collaboration over video conference, I think people are going to have a much more open mind about it, because everybody's conferencing skills are just skyrocketing this week. And I've been supporting the staff in my district. I've been on Zoom all week long. I work as a tech integration specialist in a district that has about 115 teachers. And so in 3 different towns, we have been on, of course, no more than 10 people in a building since school closed over our spring break. And so we did capacity building Zoom trainings the weekend before everybody came back from spring break. And I Zoomed over that weekend with about 80 of those 115 teachers. And then on Tuesday of our spring break, we immediately started our staff meetings over Zoom, and it went really smoothly. So like I said, I am fully expecting a lot of my staff to be more interested in doing kinds of classroom things with Zoom and Google Hangouts, Meet, and other products that we're open to using all of those kinds of products in our district. So my intent was, I really like to have a session be very interactive, but I do have a presentation that I had prepared on this topic for the MACE conference in Manhattan earlier this year. And so I kind of made my Flipgrid board off of some of those slides. And I think I'm just going to start by sharing my screen with you and going through a few of those slides. And I'll try to watch the chat box at the same time. I'm not super good at watching the chat box while I'm presenting, but I'll try to do that. But if there's something that you'd like to say, just unmute and interrupt. I'll be fine with that. And especially if you have something to add or enhance what we're talking about. So if that's okay with you, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Give me just a minute to get to my presentation once I do that. And so, and then I don't know how many of you have used the annotation tools in Zoom, but I like to open up my annotation bar and use this little spotlight so that you can kind of see if I'm talking about something on the slide. I may actually point that out with the little spotlight. And it's nice because it follows your mouse wherever you're at on the screen, and it will help you it'll kind of help you. Your mouse still works, but it will help you just draw attention to the things that you're pointing out. So this presentation, I didn't update anything for this from the MACE presentation. So the presentation link at the top here is still accurate. And I did put that in the resource board for the EdCamp, but the Nearpod join code right now that's on there is not active anymore. And I'm not going to use that today. If that's something anybody's interested in, we have done a little bit of training this week in our district on how to use a live Nearpod while you're Zooming with students or using Google Meet or another video conferencing tool. And it is a nice way to do something, but I'm not going to do that today. But at that conference, I was kind of planning on that. So there's a couple of slides that I'll skip over because they're not interactive anymore. So, but my role in the district is a support role now. And so I get the privilege of working with students and teachers in grades pre-K to 12 in our district, all different subject areas. And we have done over the course of the years that I was still in the classroom and then also in my support role, we've done a lot of different kinds of digital collaborations. And so I was just going to start by talking about a few of those. And then also I'll mention briefly the ISTE Global Collaborator Standard. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about that today unless somebody really wants to, but I'll just mention it. And then I'll also talk a little bit about some of the best practices, some of the software or tools you might use, some of the platforms that are out there. And then at the MACE conference, what we did is we actually paused my presentation long enough to join a Google Meet Hangout or Google Hangouts meet with a second grade class back in my home district. And we demoed that live at the conference for the people that were in the session. And it was a lot of fun. We did a mystery number connection with them. So if that's okay with you, that's my intentions. I won't do a live connection obviously today, but we'll kind of hit those same things that were my intentions for that original MACE session. And again, if you feel like you need to leave at any time, I understand, and I appreciate that you popped in for at least a little while. I have put this presentation in, the whole presentations in the EdCamp resources for this session. So I like to start out with explaining where my motivation comes from. And I just want to give you 3 little examples from my own life that are important to me that really make me interested in helping the students in our district. We're a very small rural district in Kansas. And I really like to help them make connections outside of our little area. And part of my motivation comes from hosting an exchange student. This is Sveta. She was here her junior year and lived with us as an exchange student. She was part of a FLEX program, which is it's a sponsored program, and it stands for Future Leaders Exchange. And it was at one time hosted by the US for students from the countries that were former Soviet countries. And so it was teaching them about civics and civic leadership and things like that. So it wasn't just a traditional exchange program. And it was really an eye-opening experience for us. And we enjoyed that a lot. We enjoyed hosting her, and we learned a lot from just having her be part of our family. So then my son was the same age as Sveta, and he was motivated after she lived with us to become an exchange student himself. So this is my son, Zach. His junior year on the left side, he was part of the Congress Bundestag exchange and spent his junior year in Germany living with a host family there. And that exchange is also part of the State Department's programs that has been around since World War II, that is for building diplomatic relations between the US and Germany. So it's a long-standing program. He came home, he graduated from high school, and then before he started college, he actually did another year as an exchange program in Russia. And that program was part of the National Security Languages Institute program that they have for youth. And that program is also a part of the State Department's program. And those programs are for focusing on languages, countries where languages are spoken in countries that are of national security interest to us. So those programs change, the countries change from year to year based on our current relationships with different countries. So at the time he did it, Russia was still an open country for exchanges. They're no longer an open country for exchanges in this program, but Russian is still a security language. And so other countries where Russian is spoken, those are still countries that you can do exchanges with those kinds of countries. So he went to college, he graduated with a double degree in German and Russian and a minor in international relations. And now he actually works for the State Department in their Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs. And so just all of those experiences tied in with hosting an exchange student has really helped us see the importance and the value that people have from being part of those exchanges. And I'm just kind of trying to watch the chat, and I see that Melissa also has some experience with working with the Flex Exchange program. So it's a neat way to host an exchange student. If you're interested in hosting an exchange student, those, a lot of times exchange students, and I don't mean to make this sound bad, but a lot of times they're students from very well-to-do, wealthy families from other countries that can pay to become an exchange student. And the Flex program is very much a scholarship program. It's not based on whether a family can support sending somebody. And so I just would encourage you to consider those kind of exchanges if you are thinking of hosting an exchange student. So then one other further experience that I had is that I got to go as an advisor on a study abroad trip with some students from K-State when they went to South Africa and Mozambique. And so my experience there was a firsthand experience in exchanges, and it was an agriculture and food processing focused trip. So it was very, very focused and very narrow. We were there for about 17 days, but just the experience of getting to a firsthand experience another culture and find out what we have alike and what we have different. That's the motivation that I bring to this, and why I think it's valuable to let kids make collaborative projects of all different kinds, and not just between other countries, but even we even have projects built within our own district where kids from different towns don't know one another. We're a consolidated district, and so we have 3 different towns, and those kids don't know one another. So it's good for us to just even build relationships across the buildings in our district. So that's kind of the background of where I come from with it. Just a few past examples from our district. I won't go through all of these, but we've had everything from science data collection projects. We've had, back when I was still a classroom teacher, when Skype was very new in the classroom, we Skyped with an author of a book that we were reading. We've taken part in formal collaboration projects that are through the State Department. I had a high school world language teacher that was very interested in helping her students make connections to other students. So they did things back when this kind of technology wasn't even available. They were using VoiceThread, and they were hours and hours apart in time zones. And so it had to be asynchronous communication. So there's lots of examples that were early on before technology was so available. The first monster exchange project that I did took hours for the pictures to upload. You know, today we have such easy ways for our teachers and our students to find each other and connect. And I just want to really encourage you to take advantage of those really nice, easy ways to find one another and to help your students get a bigger picture of the outside your classroom walls. So this picture on this slide is a very recent picture of a student who used to be an exchange student in our high school in our town. And this is the second grade class from this year. So she's back in Italy this year. And they were studying what Christmas is like, what holidays are like around the world. So they Skyped in with her, and she talked to them around the holidays about what Christmas was like back in Italy. So some of them knew her. She was staying with some of their family members, and so some of them had past experience with her, and that meant a lot to them to see somebody that they knew and get to talk about that. And that was one part of their project. They also had guest speakers come in and talk about other countries that they had lived in and they had studied in and what the holidays were like there. But this was one more way that they could broaden those the classroom walls. Let's go through just a couple other examples. We've had connections with family members of students who are deployed military members. We've had connections with the upper right corner picture up here. This is a teacher who uses a lot of sign language for her classroom management. So the kids all have a sign for, I need to sharpen my pencil, I need to go to the bathroom. So she actually started out that unit of teaching them her classroom expectations about sign language by Skyping in with a sign language interpreter. And then this one is a very interesting one in the lower center corner. We had a student who was doing an independent research project on September 11th and the attack on the Twin Towers as a follow-up to a reading passage the students had done. She had an uncle who had lived there during the time that the bombings happened. And she had, of course, she wasn't born yet. She was just a sixth grade student last year. She wasn't even born when that happened. So she'd never even really heard his story firsthand. So what she did is she actually interviewed him live while we were connected using Google Hangouts Meet, and let her classmates hear that interview, and they all had that opportunity to hear what it was like firsthand for him. So there's so many different things you can do, not just collaborations with other classes, but taking advantage of experts in lots of different ways. This is another example, Monster Exchange project, where the students draw a monster, they write their description, they exchange their descriptions only, and then another class tries to redraw the monsters based on the written description. So this was a fun project that we had some 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students do, and then afterwards, after they made this project exchange, then we video conferenced afterwards and got to have some personal chats with those same kids that they had worked with. We've also used this platform quite a bit. It's called Learn Around the World. And right now they're super active because they're making a lot of free virtual opportunities for families that are working from home. And so if you haven't followed them on Twitter, if you do, you'll get a lot of notifications right now if you have your notifications on for them, because they're posting lots of things. But basically, he travels around. He takes videos and pictures and interviews people on different science and social studies topics. And then he offers live connections free or scheduled connections for a fee. So if you can make the times work that he has free opportunities available, there's a lot of great free opportunities here. One of the things he does that makes it really engaging for the kids is that he also integrates Kahoot with it. So while they're watching a live conference, then he also has a live Kahoot game going on. So if you happen to be a one-to-one situation, then they can take part in that quiz where he intersperses a few little quiz questions along with his presentations as they go. So those are some examples that we have done with that particular platform. So those are just a few. We'll talk about a couple other platforms later on, but I do want to take just a minute and have you kind of just maybe chat into the box, or if you want to even unmute and talk for a minute about whether or not you're familiar with the ISTE standards. I'm not going to spend a lot of time. I'm going to flip through a couple of slides and skip over some of these because it took quite a long time to talk about them. But if you're familiar with the ISTE standards, they have teacher standards and student standards. And they are for technology and they can kind of give structure to how you use technology in your classroom. ISTE is the International Society for Technology and Education, and they have standards that are designed for teachers, students, coaches, administrators. And you'll notice that one of those standards focuses on global collaboration here for the students, and then also over on the teacher side, there's collaborator, and then a lot of these can tie into that global collaboration. So that global collaborator standard, when you look at sorry, I'm going to jump ahead. When you look at that standard, this is the language of their standard. And I really like that I kind of pulled out in blue some of the things that I like that it focuses on. It focuses on really broadening perspectives, enriching students' learning, working together, collaborating. There are 4 different individual substandards. This one focuses on, they kind of get deeper in rigor as they go through. So this first one is about using digital tools to make connections, to just broaden understanding, right? So that's pretty low level. Just we want to connect so we understand someone better. This is the next one. Students use these technologies to work with others, and the focus is on an issue, a problem, a viewpoint. Right? The next one gets a little bit even more rigorous. We're working on teams, we're having roles and responsibilities, we're working towards a common goal. And then this is the last one, is to explore issues, to use the collaborative work, and to investigate solutions. So I think they're all related, but they kind of also get deeper in rigor as you go through. So those standards are, I think this is a fantastic one to just have as kind of an overarching standard in your classroom throughout the year, if that's possible for you to do. And let's skip ahead. I'll skip ahead just a little bit if I can. While I'm doing that, if anybody would like to chat in and give us examples of projects that you've taken part in, I would be glad to hear that. I'm going to talk just a little bit more about some other examples of projects and some platforms that are out there. I think that might be what I know from talking to a couple of you earlier, that those are some things you're interested in. And one of the things that I think it's important before we ever talk about a lot of these platforms is to understand the Sustainable Development Goals. And I know Calliope had said earlier that she had gone to a conference. She got to be an exchange student in Finland. And the conference she went to was focused on the UN goals, right? Am I kind of reflecting that correctly? Yeah, good. So the United Nations has a set of 17 sustainable development goals that they've identified as important for really sustaining life on Earth. And you'll notice each one of them has a little icon, and this is a nice graphic that represents all of them. And a lot of the platforms that are set up right now for facilitating global collaborations have a connection to one of those, or maybe multiples, or they might just support all of them. And so sometimes when you're looking at a platform, you will see reference to these, even sometimes to the exact images, the graphics and things like that. So I think just maybe having an overview of them is good. The resource has some links to it down here. Like if you want to open up the presentation later and look at that link, you're welcome to. It's a great way to even structure the collaborations. You know, you can pick one of these sustainable development goals and maybe focus on trying to address one of those, or cover or increase awareness of them, or something like that. So I just like to always mention it as we get started talking about those. We got some good stuff coming into the chat too, and I'm not going to take time right now to look at all of it, but I do want you to be sure that you're looking at the chat if you don't have the chat window open. So just a few, these are a couple of platforms that are on my radar right now. The first two are a couple that I don't have experience with students yet, but I have accounts with them and I am very impressed with what I'm seeing. So Empatico is I think I saw it the first time at ISTE in the summer of 2018. So if you are interested in this one, this is actually sponsored by the Kind Bar Company. So the Kind bars that you can buy, the granola bars at the grocery store, this is one of their like their charitable projects. So it's intended for students that are a little younger, ages 6 to 11. And they have the goal of developing empathy and then also helping you. Oh, good, Ariel's on here. Hi. And she says she's used Empatico. Very good. You want to unmute and say anything about it, Ariel? I'd be glad to have you do it.
So I know that they've changed in the last year, and I used it when I was in 4th grade, so it's been over 12 months. But you set up your schedule for when you're available, and then other teachers do, and they do like the time zone switching for all of you. I mean, that's just really nice for me. And they match you up with somebody. You can say if you want out of the country or in the country. So we got matched with a class in Brazil. And then they also have lesson plans, which is just really nice because I didn't really know what to do or say. And so as you and co-teacher, you message within their system, you message within Empatico, and then decide what lesson plan you're going to do. And so you are both looking at the same lesson plan. So it was very nicely organized.
I like the structure that it offers. I think that that's really good. And there's also sort of a level of protection that you're not giving personal information. Excuse me. You're not giving your personal information during that communication. So that's kind of nice as well. Yeah. One that I saw at about the same time was also new was Beluga. And it kind of took a little while to get going, but there's quite a few users in Beluga now. And it's sort of the same concept. It's a platform to help people find connections. And they have this model of curiosity, learning, action, and impact. And so it's, it's got a little bit of content in the platform. So there's things that you have your students read or watch or videos to watch, some questions that they answer. So it kind of helps to develop their curiosity around a topic. And then you make, as you read those things and watch those things and listen to those things, your class is earning points, kind of like almost like money for your class that you then get to spend on an impact project. And they have certain impact projects that are always being featured. I know I didn't look this week, but earlier around March, right before I gave this presentation at Mace, one of the impact projects was supporting a sidewalk school in India, in the slums of India, where they don't have any physical buildings, but they have volunteers who go out onto the sidewalks and hold school for the kids that live in those slums. And so they were providing impact points that they were going to donate support to that for every project that your students watched and listened to. So it's just kind of an interesting platform. And again, it helps to make some connections and it gives some structure to what you're doing. I know there's been at least another session that's mentioned the Global Read Aloud at this EdCamp. This is a great project that is also it's not truly a platform that helps you find people, but there's several active Facebook groups associated with the Global Read Aloud, where every year there's a set of books that's identified as the common book that's going to be used for the Global Read Aloud for that year. I know this year's were just released. I haven't really looked at them yet myself, but the list for the coming year, the books have been released. And if you get involved in the Facebook groups, and what they encourage you to do is just find your own partner out of the people that are in those Facebook groups and do some collaborations around the book that you've read that's in common. So I've had several teachers in my district that have taken part in that, where they've read the book aloud, they found a partner class. Sometimes it involves a video conference, sometimes it involves more of a pen pal relationship. We had a 4th grade class that everything was done through Flipgrid for their connection with their class in Canada. So it just depends on whatever the two teachers of those two classes decide, you kind of facilitate your own exchange for that. So if you haven't looked at the Global Read Aloud, you don't have to be a reading teacher or a language arts teacher necessarily to even take part in that. You know, you can use this book, the Global Read Aloud, as a center for a project, but then the connections that you make with the other class could tie into anything, any subject area. What age for Beluga, Dina asked. I think I have it on that slide. Let me double check. No, I'll have to double check on that. Maybe in a little bit I can stop and look that up. I think that it goes up, I think it goes up older than Empatico. I know one of them was for younger kids and one went up to an older age. This is just another resource too. This isn't necessarily maybe connections, but it brings in a lot of experts resources. So this is Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. National Geographic is one of the many sponsors, one of the big name sponsors that you'll see for these. And they have several free events every month. And basically they present it over YouTube Live. You can apply for your class to be live on a camera spot, or you can just watch. So if you're on a camera spot, then you use Zoom to connect with them, and otherwise you just watch through YouTube. So again, it's not maybe a collaboration, but it's broadening the horizons of what your students are exposed to in your own classroom or your own town. This focuses a lot on things like scientists, conservationists, the things that you would think about with National Geographic, explorers, adventurers, things like that. I know during Women's History Month, they had a whole feature on just women in science and women working for them. So lots of great examples there that you could tie in as well. Skype in the classroom has really developed. I mentioned earlier that, you know, when I was still in the classroom teaching 4th grade, we had used Skype to connect with a book author many, many years ago. It was a long time ago now. Skype was a pretty new tool. They've really developed their education platform in a pretty robust way. And the newest things on this list that they're adding in are these last 3 or 4, that they're starting to have like themed collections and special events and collaborative projects that you can make connections. Of course, the intent here is going to be to use Skype as the platform because they're promoting their platform. So, but the tip that I have for you is, like, if you can get comfortable with one video conferencing tool, you can learn to use all of them. So before this whole work at home situation, my teachers all were very scared to do a collaboration like this unless I was in the room with them. I anticipate after this, they're going to be so comfortable with Zoom that they're going to just be wanting to do it all the time by themselves. They won't need any help from me. But if you can use Zoom, you can use Google Hangouts Meet, you can use Skype. I've used WhatsApp with some people because that's what was available. There's just lots of different platforms that you can video conference with. And once you get the hang of it, you'll be able to make the transition from one to the other. So by being familiar with all of them, you open up the possibilities of your connections, because there are some schools that will only be allowed to use one or the other, or somebody that's only comfortable with one platform. So if you can kind of open up your mind about what the conferencing tool is going to be that you use, you'll have more options available to you. We have a good conversation in the chat going, and I'm not watching all of it, so be sure that you are. If there's a question, be sure to unmute and ask it, because I think there's just lots of good resources being shared there. This is kind of another related resource that I added in here just because I like this. If you've ever used GoNoodle as a brain break resource, UNICEF has a similar platform called UNICEF Kid Power-Ups. And so they're streaming videos that you use with your class. They have different categories like yoga, active, more active. There's some dance type breaks. And every time you do one, your class earns points. And so then all of your points unlock the UNICEF like ready to eat nutritional meals that get donated to places where there's a hunger issue. So I think we have a couple of teachers that use this interspersed with GoNoodle here and there, but the kids like it because they feel like what they're doing is motivating for creating something positive for somebody else in the world.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
For this UNICEF Kid Power, is that just for a class, or, like, for example, if I have a kindergartner at home, does it just have to be in a classroom setting?
They released an at-home something recently because of the changes that everybody's experiencing. So I don't have it in this presentation. It wasn't in place until just recently, but I did see that come across my account information. So take a look at it. I'm sure it'll be right on their website probably. So yeah, if you want to try it out, yeah. I think I shared it with our PE teachers because they were working on some choice boards and stuff to send home. So I think that it might be one of those things that it's not real well known. I don't hear too many people talking about it, but a good opportunity. Okay, somebody was asking maybe about things for older students too. This is a platform that we have used just a little bit with the free account. There's a free and a premium version of this, and it's not necessarily collaboration either, but what it has is it has industry volunteers from different industries will agree to do like virtual chats or be guest speakers talking about their careers. So this is a very career focused tool. And again, it is free right now. Of course, just like everybody else, they've made some kind of free version of their product so that you'll get hooked on it, so that when things go back to normal, you'll buy it, you know. But it does have it has a different kind of platform than what I've seen in a lot of things. And so if you have a career focus, which we do at our high schools, we're very career oriented, working with students on career choices. If you don't have a lot of local mentors if you're trying to find mentors for students and you're in a small town, you don't have a big variety of industry or anything, it might be a good resource that you could tie in with some of those career exploration type things. And they do have parts of it are free. It's just not all of it is free. We have had some really good experiences using virtual collaborations with the National Park System. A lot of the national parks in our country will have lessons that you can sign up for where a park ranger will deliver the lesson. So this was just about a month ago. One of our classes down in Wetmore was connected with a park ranger from Denali National Park, and they were learning about sled dogs, but it was about the science of sled dogs, and their materials are really nice. They give you a pre-lesson, pre-connection lesson. During the lesson, here's what you're going to be expected to do. Here's the handouts. Here's the materials. She was supposed to have some things on hand that he had the kids do a demonstration with. And then after the lesson, here's some things that you can do. It's all tied to standards. So if you need to give a rationale for what the connection is going to be used for, they're very well done. And you can tell that the park rangers have done their experience. They know what they're doing, and they really even facilitated the class very well. Even there was a couple of kids that were a little off task, and they were able to manage that very well. And so it's a neat program, and a lot of the parks have them. We haven't used a lot of them, but because of the interest in the Iditarod, that's why we've used the Denali National Park one with the sled dogs. Learn Around the World, I mentioned this one a little bit earlier, that we had used this one before. Their hashtag on Twitter is GeoShow. So all of these platforms too, if you find them, find them on Twitter, find them on the social media platform that you're familiar with, and that way you get the little reminders. And I think by not letting them completely slip your mind we sometimes see something at a conference and we forget about it. If you find them on your social media, that way you kind of get constant reminders about them. You'll be able to pull them in where it fits best into your own curriculum. This is another platform that's not free, but I like mentioning it because it's different. It's called One World Classroom, and what I like about it is you can go there and get ideas for your own collaborations. It's very focused on the arts, so it's about art exchanges, music and dance exchanges. So even if you don't have the money in your budget to join and take part in it in a formal way, it might give you an idea for structuring a collaboration with a classroom that you just have a connection with. So I would still encourage you to take a look and to see what's out there as possible ways that you can structure a collaboration with your friends, with your acquaintances. Okay, and then this is another one that will be of interest to you if you work with older students. This is a program that is sponsored by the State Department. It's called the Stevens Initiative, and they have a couple different programs. They actually sponsor live connection, like live exchanges as well, but they have two programs that are really of interest that are digital. One is called the Global Nomads, and that is a school year program where you complete that program as a class. So you as a teacher would facilitate your class being partnered with some other classes. The Experiment Digital is a summer program. So that is for students to participate in. You would not be, as a school or a teacher, you would not have a role in that. The students would, they would apply and participate in that independently. And the program provides the facilitation. But all of these programs actually focus on the Middle East and North African countries because it's a State Department focus on diplomatic relations in those areas right now. So those programs have, the summer program has extended their application deadline. So if you work with high school students that you think, hey, that I know a kid that sounds right up their alley, they would love to do that, they can still apply for this summer for the Experiment Digital. And then the Global Nomads, I think the application window for next year for school projects is open right now too. So if you think those are some programs that you might be interested in, this is the time to be looking into those right now.
Is this like an opportunity to go to those places, or is it still online?
That's a great question. The Stevens Initiative actually works with the Aspen Institute in Colorado, and they do facilitate live exchanges, but these programs are not. These are digital only. So when you go to their website, you kind of have to be careful of what you're looking at, because you might get misled and think, oh, it just looks like it's an exchange program. There are parts of their program that are for live exchanges, but these two programs, Global Nomads and the Experiment Digital, those are the two that are both just digital. That's a good question. And like I said, Global Nomads would be one you would work on as a school or as a class. You would facilitate it as a teacher. But the Experiment Digital, you don't have any role in it. Like you would maybe encourage a student to apply for it, but you wouldn't have any role as a teacher in that program. Okay. And I'm just going to mention a couple of other projects. Another great way to get involved is to join another teacher's projects. And we actually have some people right here in Kansas that are very active. Some of you probably know Mrs. Smoke, and she has a couple of virtual projects that she facilitates each year that are open to other classes to join. One is the Virtual Valentine Project, where the students create and exchange Valentines, and then your goal is at the end of that exchange that you make a video conference connection with the class that you exchange Valentines with. The Awesome Squiggles Project is, it's a project around art. So the center picture down here, these were the 4 squiggles that were released last year. And what they do is they release a 4-line image that is supposed to be integrated into students' art projects. And so they have to leave those 4 lines where they are on the page and integrate them in. So you can see this tennis shoe over here has those 4 lines in it, and so does this younger child's artwork over here. So then, of course, you submit it to a gallery of artwork, and then the goal is to make a video conference connection afterwards so that the kids can also talk to one another.
We've also connected with her class and done like 7 Wonders of Kansas, or just 7 Wonders of your town. And it was fun for first graders to create that and then communicate it. It was hilarious, to be honest, but there was a lot of work that went into it.
Very good. I think she also had a project around gingerbread houses. Did anybody happen to do that? Or maybe that was part of it. I don't think that was part of that one though, was it, Dina? Yeah, okay. Yeah, so we have, so following the right people on social media so that you know when they're releasing their projects, that's part of, being ready to take part in this. Another person that I follow that is very active is Sara Malchow, and she has several projects that I would say fit into this collaboration project idea. One is a St. Patrick's Day graphing project where your class opens a box of Lucky Charms. You divide up the marshmallows and count up the different numbers of each shape of marshmallow, and then you graph it. You contribute your data to a larger pool of data that everybody in the project is contributing to. So you get this big result of a lot of data over the course of the project. Epic Pals is also a project that she manages. Some of you might have seen that before. If you use the Epic platform by Scholastic, it's an e-reader program from Scholastic. If you use that program, what they do is Sarah and another friend of hers release a monthly, it looks like a grid of books that are in Epic. So there's like 9 or 12 books. There's an upper elementary and a lower elementary list, and a link to a Padlet. So your students can read the books that are on the list and then respond on the Padlet that goes with that month's books. And so then the collaboration becomes getting to look at the other people's responses on the Padlet from what they've written. And then she told me that next year they're going to be releasing another, it's a little bit like the Monster Exchange project where you draw and write. It's going to be a snowman themed project where you create a snowman out of different shapes, and then you write the description of it and see if the other class can recreate your snowman. So there's, you know, finding people that are involved in those projects and just kind of watching for that opportunity. That's a good way to get involved without having to go to a lot of work yourself with planning something. So I would just encourage you to, you know, look for those kinds of opportunities too. This slide, I'm not going to talk too much about this right now, but this slide is in the presentation if you want it. There's just a couple of specific Facebook groups that I belong to, or different communities that I find partners from. So in my role in the district, I do a lot of facilitating. I know a teacher wants to do a project, I'll try to find a partner, I'll support them, I'll go into their classroom and help them with the technology, help them get it set up, kind of help them train the kids and that kind of thing. But then it's not usually me and the kids. I don't have any classrooms of students, but these are where I find a lot of the connections that we use. Okay. Let's see, it's about 1:45. Is there anybody that would like to add anything? I feel like I've talked a lot and I'm probably not the expert in this room. I'm just the moderator. So if there's anybody that would like to add anything, I'm gonna go up in my slide deck just a little bit, but if you want to unmute and add anything, I'd be glad to have you join in.
There was just a tweet by EdCamp 26 minutes ago that on the session grid right underneath the tutorial link will be a link that we all can share our Twitter handles if you're on Twitter.
That's a great idea. Mm-hmm. Thanks for sharing that. I'll just share a couple other slides here from my presentation then, and then I'll kind of wrap things up. I mentioned most of these tools I mentioned already, but I don't know how many people have tried to use WhatsApp before, but WhatsApp is a very, it's a messaging app. It's really, really popular in countries other than the United States. So almost every other country in the world, I think it's a popular messaging app for that. And so I'll give you a little great story. Jessica says it's great. So I was supposed to support a classroom, a Spanish teacher we have a Spanish teacher this year from Spain. And she was going to make a connection with someone back in Spain for one of her Spanish classes. And when we went into the room, when I got into her room, she was all in a panic because she had gotten confused about the time zones, which is one of the most complicated parts of doing a digital collaboration, you know, is staying on top of the time zones and the times. And she made a mistake in the communication. So the class that was expecting to make the connection right then, the person wasn't going to be available for another hour. And so she said, but I have a friend that I could call on WhatsApp. And I said, okay, well, call and see if she's available. So she used her WhatsApp app to call her friend in Spain, and the friend was available. But the problem that we had was we didn't have an adapter to project her phone onto the screen in the room, but I had a projector for my phone. So I very quickly downloaded the WhatsApp. I made the connection with her friend on my phone, and, you know, we were modeling for students, you know, making adjustments on the fly. Like we had to make adjustments to the technology. We had to make adjustments to what the person we were expecting to talk to. You know, it was just, overall, I think the kids really got a lot out of the experience, but also of watching us troubleshoot the situation. So I always tell teachers, like, don't worry if things don't work right. Like, have students watching you take care of a mistake or a problem, or even just handling it and not getting all bent out of shape. Maybe you don't get to make the connection that day because the other class doesn't show up, or you had a mistake in your time zones or whatever, and it's not the end of the world. And for them to watch you deal with a problem and how you handle it, that's a really important skill that you're modeling for them. So when something doesn't go quite right in a connection, you know, there's still value in that.
Hey Lisa, I'm kind of curious. What did you do to connect your phone to the screen?
So I have an iPhone and I have an the iPhone, the iPad, a dongle that connects to a VGA to the iPad. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
I can put that in the resources. It's just like, so we have mostly VGA connections to our
Okay.
projectors, and it's an adapter that goes into the lightning port of the iPad, and it goes into the VGA. And I have one for HDMI too. You can get them for whatever kind of projector you need, but it will work in an iPhone. So I just took my iPad adapter, plugged it into my phone, connected to the projector, called the person on WhatsApp, and we had to hold it. It was a little awkward, but we were, turning it around the room like this so she could see the people in the room, and we made do. It wasn't perfect, but we made
So
do.
that could be connected to any device. I don't have an iPad. I teach with a regular just computer. So it could be like an HDMI connector or something.
Yeah, well, so the reason we couldn't connect with her phone is she had a Google phone or something. I'm sure there probably is an adapter for a different phone.
Sure.
But we didn't happen to have one, but we all have iPad adapters because we have iPads in our district, and in addition to our computers. And so I said, well, I can put my iPad adapter into my phone and we can call her that way. And so we made do. But yeah, some other, go ahead.
No, I use WhatsApp too with my friends in Spain, and that'd be a great idea. I'm just trying to figure out how to connect my phone to my computer screen to share with my students.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah,
Thanks for
it's
sharing
a little
that.
tricky. Yeah. There's one other slide that I have in here that I'll mention, just some other like techie hardware stuff that I have found useful, and we have a few of these across the district. We have these blue snowball microphones that are USB connection microphones that just go into the laptop. But the reason they're really nice is because they'll pick up the whole classroom. So it's like a condenser mic. It's not just, you don't have to stand right in front of it like you would if you were just going through the laptop microphone. You'd have to come right up to the laptop to be heard. So if you can, I set those usually kind of behind the students, behind their desks, and they can ask a question from their desk and be heard. They're very good microphones. They're around $100. They're not outrageously expensive, but we have about one in every building. So if somebody wants to do a connection, they can like borrow it from the principal's office. And then we use them for other, recordings and like admin meetings. They might use them if there's more than one person in a room. They can connect and then use it it'll pick up everybody in the room. And then I have a few just little small flexible like webcams that are on flex stands. And because some of my teachers' rooms, they're set up weird. Some of them, the connection to their projectors at the back of the room, so they have to have their desk back there and their computer back there. But if we want to use if we want to have a camera shot of the class, turning the laptop around can be really, really awkward. So a lot of times we just hook up a separate webcam and we'll shoot it out looking at the students. Yeah. You got some other tips coming in there. Yeah, there's other ways that you can, screen mirror a device without a cable. Absolutely. Reflector, that'll work. There's a few other slides in here that you can go through if you're interested with like some of the tips, and let's see there. I think they're up here. Some of the like best practices about, have like a little hotspot on the floor if students are going to be on camera where they come, so they know right where they need to stand and right where they need to look if they're going to be on screen. A lot of times we give our kids like a job. So somebody's going to be a question asker. Somebody's going to write down answers. Somebody might be the person who's just going to take some pictures, because a lot of times the teachers are very busy during the connection. So who's going to document this and make sure that we can put it on Twitter later? All of those are good practices. So there's a lot of little tips in the presentation if you want to download it.
I have a question.
Yes.
So you mentioned that one of the issues that you had came in with time zones, but what about the language barrier? Have you ever had any issues with them not speaking English or not being able to understand each other?
Yeah, most of the time I haven't excuse me, I haven't ever had any trouble where they didn't have any English at all. We don't, the Spanish teacher, obviously they were connecting with the goal of sharing Spanish language. So that was an intentional thing. But most of the time, the platforms that I've used to connect with, they're generally learning English if they're not fluent. I have had some cultural things that have happened. For example, we were connected with a school in Canada, and they were using the term First Peoples. They were talking about First Peoples. And the students that I worked with didn't know what they meant. And that's what, instead of saying Native Americans, in Canada, the common term is the First Peoples groups. That's what they would call Native American groups, the First Peoples. And so that was really confusing to my students. They were like, what are they talking about? So there's some cultural things that you may have to explain. And there's also sometimes some accent things, even from other places in the US. You know, sometimes they'll be, I think just talking to the kids about being respectful. Sometimes I've had students that kind of laugh when we were connected to somebody with a really sharp accent, like, why are they talking so funny? You know, and so that's a skill that we need to help kids learn, is to be respectful of different dialects and different accents that people have. But as far as a true language barrier, it isn't something that we've really, none of the connections that I've had have had that as an issue. Thank you for that question. I'm going to stop my screen share since we're getting close to being at an hour. And if there's anybody that wants to unmute and ask any other questions, like I said, I don't feel like I'm probably the expert in the room. That looked like a lot of great things were being shared in the chat. I hope that I capture that chat for you.
Hey, Lisa, do you have set in your defaults for Zoom to capture your chats?
I think I do, but I was messing with my settings so much this week trying to help everybody else get their settings. I'm like, I hope that's how I have it.
It'd be nice if you could share the chat, because there's some great information there. But let me ask, can I ask you a question about Zoom since you've been playing with it?
Sure.
How did you get that annotation tool?
Sure. So when you're screen sharing, would you like to try to screen share for a minute? I can allow that.
Yeah.
Let me turn it on real quick. I have it turned off for all participants. Okay. So if you want to screen share, I can walk you through it. When you are screen sharing, at the top of your screen, you're going to see a green and red little control
Annotate.
bar. Yeah.
Yep.
So when you hover over annotate and then look for the spotlight or something like that, is that what it's called?
Yep.
Yep. And there's two little versions of it, but yeah, I use that a lot, and the teachers have liked it. Now, my teachers have already started Zooming some with some of their students, and it's useful to them. There's a bit of a lag to it, so you have to be a little bit careful with that. But like if you're trying, especially if you're teaching like a reading lesson where you're saying, okay, push the letters together, then there's a little bit of a lag to what it's pointing to. So you just have to kind of anticipate that.
Did you guys see that? I kind of, is that annotate right there?
There you go.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Can I ask one more Zoom question?
You can. I don't know if I can answer it, but you can ask.
There was somebody here at this conference that their school had teachers hold up like, you know, like, we love you, miss you, whatever. And they were like in the correct order. Does anybody know how to do that?
You mean
sorry. My school did it. I actually organized it for our school, but what I did is I had all of the teachers just take a picture holding the sign, and then they all sent it to me, and then I used like on a piece of paper I wrote out the words and broke it up into 4 quadrants because it was 16 words, so it was a 4x4, and then I created 4 different pictures, and then I put those 4 together. But I've also seen people do it on Zoom, but then you have all their names and all that stuff on there. I just liked it with the actual picture, but yeah, it wasn't too hard. It was actually super simple. And I can send, well, I have an iPhone, but the program I used was just called Layout App by iPhone or whatever. So
I just thought it was interesting on Zoom because we're all Zooming right now. So that would be a fun thing to send to our kids, you know.
Yeah, I don't have an answer for how you're saying to keep them in a certain order on the grid view, right? Yeah,
right, because Brittany would have one word, I would have one word, and we'd have to have it in the correct order.
Mm-hmm.
I guess who's ever taking the picture could just tell you right then and there, like on their screen, who's in order. So they could say, Lisa, I need you to do this word, and then they all create it while you're in there. So that way you know that it's in the correct order.
Yeah, that would work.
Okay, sorry, off topic, just was interested.
That's okay. I think we're kind of wrapped up. Brittany had asked a question and mentioned in the chat that she'd done a mystery Skype with geography, and then kind of kept track on a map where all all the different places that she had connected with. So that's fun. Our 4th grade kind of tries to do that. They do US geography, and so they try to hit every region. So also kind of fun. You know, I didn't mention the Read Across America. I don't have any teachers that have participated actively in that, but I have read to people as a volunteer for that from other places. A lot of schools will try to hit every state in the country during Read Across America week. And they'll try to do, you know, we're going to have a story from Kansas this week. And so I've been the reader from Kansas, and I've connected and read for somebody else who was doing that project. So Dina, if I don't have my chat set to save, is there a way I can turn that on now, do you think? If I
No, because
I'll copy it all and paste it before I leave the Zoom, and then we'll know for sure that I've got it saved for everybody. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you guys. You're welcome to stay on, and we can keep chatting if you want, but otherwise, I hope you had a good day today. I think was this the last session for Zooms? I think it was.
Dina, I don't know if this would work, but if you were to pin each speaker in like the order, maybe that would let you put them in order. If you go up to the upper right hand corner of each speaker where the 3 dots are and pin their video, if you were to do that in order, that might give you the effect you want.
I'll have to try that. Thank you.
Sure.
Lisa, I'm sorry, where are you going to post your slides? I mean, I took some notes, but it'd be good. I know you're going to post them somewhere.
They are in, so if you go to the grid on the EdCamp grid where the Zoom
Is it the flip?
It's
the flip grid?
Well, it's the grid that has the Zoom links posted. There's over on the far right column, it says resources.
Yep.
And
that's where you're going to have it?
The link is in there already. Yeah,
Cool.
it's in there already. Yep.
Cool. Thank you.
And I'll also post this chat in there. I'll just copy it right into the document because I've got it copied.
Cool.
I'll do that before
okay.
I close out the window. Make sure I
awesome. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining in, everybody.